So good evening, Dumelang Molweni. Let me be the first to welcome you to this this evening. An even bigger welcome to our guest of honor, Professor Neil Armitage, together with his family and friends. Because where would we be, we as academics, without the support and encouragement of our loved ones? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and congratulations to the family, because nobody becomes a professor on their own. There's always people who carry the load and they become professor. The practice of giving inaugural lectures is an ancient one. In the Middle Ages, it was used as the final examination before one could become a licensed teacher. And since then, it has evolved into an opportunity for professors who have achieved the highest academic rank possible to share what excites them, their passion, with as wide an audience as possible. Professor Armitage's passion happens to be water. Over the past year, the University of Cape Town and the Greater Western Cape community have been working together to avoid day zero, the day the taps would run dry following the worst drought we have seen in a century. This inaugural lecture, titled After the Water Crisis, How to Turn Cape Town into a Water-Sensitive City, is relevant not only to Cape Town, but globally, as we increasingly see cities that were once water-rich now facing similar potential crises. The work of Professor Armitage reminds us of the positive impact researchers and academics can have on society. His research and the recommendations that he provides will impact directly the lives of future generations. And impact is what we at UCT strive to achieve. I will now hand over to Professor Alison Lewis, the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment, to formally introduce Professor Armitage.
Thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor. Professor Neil Armitage is a registered professional engineer with 33 years of experience, but might easily have chosen some of his other career options, which were as a politician, an airline manager, or a sailor. One might argue that being an academic is the perfect combination of those three professions. Politician, academia is famous for its maneuvering in politics. Airline manager, running an academic department with its multiple parties perpetually at risk of colliding, or worse, of aligning in a Swiss cheese model of an aircraft crash, is pretty similar to running an airline. And lastly, sailor. Being at UCT is similar to being in a small craft, trying to be an optimist, but constantly under threat of ill winds and capsize. One of Neil's interesting claims to fame is that neither the city nor the country where he was born still exist. He was born in Salisbury, southern Rhodesia, which is now Harare, Zimbabwe. Another of his interesting claims to fame is that, we should do a trivial pursuit on Neil Armitage, is that his 3 degrees were earned from 3 different universities. His BSc Eng from the Old University of Natal, his MSc from the University of Cape Town, and his PhD from Stellenbosch. Before joining UCT as a senior lecturer in hydraulics in 1995, he spent 11 years working for Liebenberg and Stander, consulting engineers. This exposed him to a wide range of civil engineering work, mainly water-related, which has stood him in great stead during his UCT career. In 2005, he was promoted to associate professor, and then in 2015 to full professor. He has served this faculty well and selflessly in a number of roles, most importantly as Deputy Dean for Undergraduate Affairs from 2011 to 2012, and as head of the Department of Civil Engineering from 2012 to 2017. In 2015, he co-founded the Future Water Research Institute and has been a major force in shaping its agenda and its broad-reaching mandate. He has authored or co-authored more than 80 publications and has supervised 19 masters and 3 PhD students. In 2013, he received the South African Water Research Commission's Award for Human Capital Development in the water and science sectors. With such a dense and impressive CV, you may think that all Neil ever did was work, but no. He reads prodigiously, that's his word, everything from Homer Deus to Airliner World. He loves music and can sing. In fact, there was another briefly considered career option. He sails dinghies, and he is a registered national race officer for sailing, and he has a passion for air shows. Neil is that person who you must have on your Trivial Pursuit team. He seriously knows everything about everything, and if he doesn't, he has a pretty good chance of working it out. He can tell you about anything from the pros and cons of towing an iceberg to Cape Town for day 0, to behavioral economics and human miscalculations, to Western Cape political shenanigans. But more than all this, Neil is also a warm, caring, and loyal colleague. He is honest and forthright, and a man of integrity. He has been married to the same wife, Debbie, for 27 years. He has 3 children, Jess, Mike, and Lauren, and is deeply connected to his family and his faith. When asked, who are your heroes, Neil wrote, my family. They are all such wonderful people. I often wonder how I got to be so lucky to be a part of them. This gives you some idea of the character of Neil. So Professor Armitage, from the faculty, we are lucky to have you as part of us. And I invite you to present your lecture.
Vice-Chancellor, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Dean, Professor, colleagues, honoured guests, family, anybody else I want to let down. It's wonderful to see you here. Just listening to Alison's wonderful eulogy. I wonder for a moment. But in the absence of the personal question, I'll have to do my best. So thank you very much. I'm going to try and entertain you for 40 minutes about one of my passions. And that's about water, but not any old type of water. So firstly, we dodged a bullet, as I'm sure you're all aware. We came perilously close to running out of water, perilously close to that dreaded day 0. Now, to understand how that happened, I just need to give you a little bit of background. I know most of you know this. If you don't, you haven't listening in class. So, first of all, a map of South Africa showing rainfall. And you can see quite clearly the conundrum that Cape Town has. And that is, it sits down here in something of an oasis. So this brown patches are the dry bits, the blue patches are the wet bits, and apart from the mountains around Cape Town, we're surrounded by a dry bit, except for the sea. But I remind of the rhyme of the ancient mariner, water, water everywhere, nor yet a drop to drink. However, we can fix that. So the other thing you need to know is that Cape Town water is actually part of a larger system called the Western Cape Water Supply System that deals with the whole area from Hottentots Mountains right up to nearly the end of the Berg River, actually. And it's not only about Cape Town, it's about other municipalities, and it's about agriculture as well, which turned out to be quite important when the city came to managing their supply. There are the big 6 dams, and if you haven't heard about the big 6 dams, you clearly don't come from Cape Town. But there they are, all in a row, all along that eastern escarpment to capture the rainwater and store it ready for use, particularly in the dry areas. And it's dominated particularly by Teerwaterskloof, the big one on the right. And if you want to know what they look like, there they are from the air. There's 4 of them, and then there's the big one. In good years, I took that from the bridge boat, by the way, and in bad years. And this is the real issue, isn't it? It's about the growing water demand in Cape Town. So we've got a situation here, courtesy of the City Council, where from 2020 to today, we've had a population growing at roughly 3% per annum. So to put that in context, it means that Cape Town's population doubles about every 25 years. But the interesting thing is that the water demand is growing faster than the population. And that is because we're getting to use more and more water in our lives. Way back in 1920, a lot of people didn't have flush toilets. A lot of people only bathed once a week. Washing machines weren't invented as we know them now. And as time has gone on, we've got used to using these things. And we use more water. But there was a turning point in 1999 when it became apparent that we were running out of surface water resources and we had to do something about it. And the Department of Water and Sanitation asked the city to start looking at managing its water better, and the city did. And the city did such a good job that water demand barely budged for the next 18, 19 years. I mean, that is astonishing in of itself. The water demand management, particularly around pressure management, so dropping the pressure at night particularly, and fixing leaks and the rest of that, actually kept water demand more or less flat. A fantastic job. Everyone was patting themselves on the back. World class. And then we had disaster. So what was the disaster about? Just quite simply, it forgot to rain. I got asked all sort of questions the last year. Whose fault was it? So I kind of thought, a bit like that movie, should we blame God? But I don't want to blame God. Actually, I told the Dutch that it was their fault. Too much carbon in the atmosphere. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is we had 3 of the driest years on record. That is why we didn't have any water. It was unexpected. It was out of the normal sequence, which you can see stretching back to 1928, but it happened. These things do. So the city had to manage it. They tried all sorts of appeals, but the one that worked was the one that was a simple extrapolation of typical historical uses down to the 13.5%, at which point it would be very difficult to extract any more water, much more water out of the reservoirs, which they called day 0, and brother, did that take off like nothing else did. Now, I've talked elsewhere about the fun we had with day 0, but since that's history, I'm going to move forward. So the city did try to do some things. Often I think it was out of desperation than anything else. Ground boreholes to tap groundwater, some small-scale seawater desalination, and a pilot-treated sewage reclamation to potable. So the groundwater story, most of you know about, essentially a lot of rainfall soaks into the ground, and the ground has an enormous capacity to hold water. It's called groundwater. It doesn't flow in underground streams, it's kind of there. Then there's the desalination. This plant was the Strainrun plant, which came online 21st of May. It produces a massive 7 megalitres, which, considering we're using over 500, is kind of not really much at all. But it makes us feel good because we can desalinate seawater. Very expensive. They wouldn't admit to how expensive, but there you go. And then, of course, something that I don't think is online yet is sewage reclamation. So this actually is Windhoek, which has been doing it for 50 years, very successfully, where they successfully take sewage, the stuff that comes out of your toilet, complete with condoms, panty liners, you name it, and they treat it by stages until eventually it pops out at the end there as potable water. And it is safe to drink. And in fact, a third of Windhoek's water supply is actually recycled sewage. And I think it's time we did that too. And it's quite simple. All you need is to get the President Ramaphosa to come and drink it on TV, and I'm sure it'll all be fine. So, new water, here we go, but not yet. Of course, the thing that saved us more than anything else was the adoption of water savings measures. Now, I don't need to tell you about this, because unless you haven't have only just arrived in Cape Town, you should all be pros, right? We all know how to shower in our bucket and use it to flush the toilet and to wash our hands in the shopping centres with no water at all. And do all sorts of other tricks that we've learned. And we've all learned how our toilets work for a start, and how much grey water we need to flush our toilets. It's brilliant. And we've done so well that Cape Town is now regarded as the most successful city in the world in terms of water demand management. And it's thanks to you guys. So well done. Now, don't forget it. We'll need this again. So the city has a plan, and here's a bit of the city's plan. So they're looking at groundwater, sewage reuse, either for potable or non-potable use, desalination, and even a bit more surface. And they've even got some prices on it. And these are some ideas, because it's large scale. If you do it small scale, it's a lot more expensive than that. So good for them. But meanwhile, we need to start thinking more holistically about the way we manage our city and what type of city we want to have going forward. Now, this is a very good friend of mine. His name is Tony Wong. He is the director of the Collaborative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities in Monash in Melbourne. And he's just won a major award for his major contribution to water management. And some years back, in 2012 to be precise, he talked a bit on what makes for a city that's future-proofed against running out of water. You can do without many things. You can't do without water. And a lot of the things are pretty obvious. We need to make it resilient so that it can cope with variations and disasters. It needs to be livable. We want to stay there. Sustainable. We're going to be able to carry on. But the key thing linking it all is what he calls blue-green corridors. That's not just about flowers or even about rivers. It's about a combination of natural-based systems plus water systems that are integral elements of the city's infrastructure for both flood conveyance. Serves me right for putting in long words. I'll stick to short ones. And amenity. Amenity is about what helps people. But here's the interesting thing, stormwater as a resource. Water-sensitive cities keep water in the town and the city. We haven't done it in the past. Engineers have made a living out of taking water from somewhere else, treating it, transporting it to the city, distributing, collating it, treating it, and sending it on its way. And it's worked very well for a couple of 100 years, but it's not going to work very well for much longer. So the city, as I said, has been doing lots of hard work, and good for them. They're doing a fantastic job, and they've come up with lots of ideas about how to augment the water supply. And there's a long, long list, but unless I miss something, they missed out the stormwater harvesting. Maybe it's buried in there. Maybe it's got something to do with Cape Flats Aquifer or something like that. I don't know. But in any case, given the fact that I had to talk on something, now this is what I'm going to talk on. And I'm going to show you some figures here. Now these are approximate, so don't quote them too much. There might be an outlier percent or two. But on the left-hand side, we have Cape Town's normal demand in gigalitres per annum. Gigalitres, 1,000 megalitres, 1 million kilolitres. It's a lot of water, okay? Don't worry about it. Now we're using a bit less now, so there we are. This is, map means not that you can find your way there, but this is mean annual precipitation. That's the approximate rainfall in terms of volume per year that generally falls on Cape Town. And this is about how much of it goes to the sea. So, okay, maybe it's up, maybe it's down. See, Mike Shand in the second row is probably going to tell me I'm up by 20%, but okay, I've got the microphone. Here's sewage return. Just this is taken off City Council figures from their wastewater treatment works. What I wanted to show out of this is that size block and that size block are similar size blocks. And we're making very little use of that. I mean, we're going to make some use of that, but this is the missing opportunity right here. So, can we take any hints from somewhere else? So this is Singapore. It's an island state in Malaysia. And it was dependent on Malaysia for water when it became independent in 1965. And that was politically unacceptable. So they looked at how they could become independent, and one of the ways they looked at was harvesting their water. Now, in common with South Africa, Singapore has a lot of rivers. This is a typical urban river. Some of you might recognize rivers like this near you. Kind of Black River, Salt River, Lower Least Big River, and many others. Not very exciting, isn't it? I mean, you can see what the people think of it. They put great big wire fences and they turn their backs on it and all the rest of it. It's completely dead. But when I turn my camera around, that's what they've transformed it to. They've ripped out the concrete, they've made it into a parkland, and they've put high-rise buildings here. And this is a mixture of rich and poor, all sharing the same basic amenities. And of course, Singaporeans being what they are, they've got schools there, shopping centres there, and a very nice, efficient subway to get you into town if you need to go there. You don't need a car at all. Fantastic. And through this and other interventions, they've cleaned up the river water to the extent that the old harbour is now not only a feature, it's a freshwater lake. And that supplies about 10% of the city's water, purely of harvesting stormwater. The Chinese, who are never ones to want to come second to anybody these days, they have gone on a big push to create what they call sponge cities, recognizing the importance of keeping water in the city. They're now looking at stopping the water running off the hardened areas, the buildings, the roads, the parking areas, and putting it into the ground where it actually belongs. That's where it's going to go. And it becomes a resource. Remember, we can store lots of water underground. And so they're putting billions into restructuring the cities to make them sponge cities. I love that name, the sponge city. Now, stormwater is not always very clean. Sometimes it's very dirty. And you'll have seen pictures like this as well. So, and clearly, that's not exactly what you want to drink when you turn on the tap in the morning. So we have to do something to clean it up, but we need to do something to clean it up anyway, because otherwise, that ends up on our blue flag beaches, and they're no longer blue flag, right? We have to do something to clean up our stormwater system. And there are many ways we can do it, and some of them do look green. Green walls, green roofs. They not only serve to help manage the stormwater, but they're also air conditioning as well. They can take out the dust, complete with the heavy metals. They add insulating layers to the building, saving on heat, both heating and cooling. And they provide a nice, attractive building. Then there's, of course, the infamous rainwater tanks. I'm sure if I did a quick survey, how many of you got rainwater tanks in your garden? The rest of you can leave. My wife will tell you, actually, I was a reluctant convert to rainwater tanks because I know how little water they actually take. So I had a better system, by the way, and this is my system. I put it onto the ground, and a bird feed will live in a sandpit. So it goes down into the ground, and here's my well point, and then I take it out. And the trick is to get there before my neighbour. Talking about my garden, as you know, the university is a bit cash-strapped at the moment, so I've had to make use of a new field research site. So this is my house. So here's the guy that comes into this infiltration bed. It works like a charm. This is a rain garden, and I make it my mission not to let any drop leave off my property. God gave it to me. Why should I give it away? You go find your own. And, you know, this can be done at a larger scale as well. So this actually is taken in Melbourne, and it's a rain garden between two blocks of flats, and all the rainwater gets absorbed into that. You can see the engineers weren't quite sure whether it's going to work, so they did put a drain just in case. Us engineers are a very conservative bunch. There's pavable pavements. This one was the first one to be built in South Africa. It's in Wits parking area. You can see they didn't quite get it right. There's some puddles there. This was the first one in Cape Town, which is in the Parade. This is in Durban. That's also in Durban up in the Hillcrest area. And the whole point about it is that there shouldn't be any runoff from that. They should go straight into the ground, which is actually where the water belongs anyway. If you think that you need lots of open space and pretty gardens, think again. This is in San Francisco. San Francisco, the water table has dropped by up to 40 meters in places, just simply because of urbanization and pumping of the aquifer. So they're quite desperate to put water back in there. And here's an interesting, right in the middle of the CBD, here's a bank, here's a hotel. This looks like just any old plaza, but in the middle of the plaza is a low point, and those slots there allow water to go into a stone layer underneath, and from there into the ground. There are other ways of doing this. This is in North Carolina, where roundabouts and parking areas are all deliberately sunk so that the water goes in there and is filtered through these plants into the ground. I mean, this is an interesting thing. When you drive around the city, haven't you always wondered why it is that when you drive down the freeway, the median is raised, meaning they have to water it and put in stormwater systems, when actually all they needed to do was drop it, and they could have taken all that stormwater. And there you go. There's an example of a median. This one's back in Australia. All the water comes in here, it's filtered through here, and it's taken away. And actually it's taken to this lake. So this lake now has become an amenity. And more than this, the outlet to the lake goes to what the Australians call a creek. It's a little spring, a little stream, sorry. And the new standard is to make the water quality in the streams as good as it would have been before the arrival of the first fleet. Now, of course, you're not Australian, so you don't know what that means, but the equivalent is to say what I often call BJ, before Jan van Riebeck. So we kind of assume that before Jan van Riebeck, everything worked perfectly, and then after that, everything's been downhill. But whether it is or isn't, they now claim that the conditions downstream of this are just as good as they were 200, 300, 400 years ago. And this water is now clean, and it's become an amenity. Instead of that horrible concrete structure, it is a place where people can relax. They have a boma there. They have what they call a barbie, but that's because they can't pronounce braai. And it also keeps itself clean largely, because why would one want to filth up such a nice place? There are many other ways of doing it. In this case, we have a wetland, and if you're worried about the mosquitoes, the trick is to employ some mosquito killers. And these are mosquito killers, they're dragonflies. So they make sure that the dragonflies feel at home and they keep the mosquitoes in check. You can do wetlands even in the city. In the case of Melbourne, they ripped up the old culvert they used to drain the CBD, and they put it through this wetland here, and that's what it looks like. That's from the centre of the city. And just to show off, the architects make you walk across it underneath a boat, because the Australians think they can sail. Now, I love Australians, really. Some of my best friends are Australians. So, we've been working as a group now for many years, particularly with Water Research Commission, to try and provide some guidance to South Africans about how to do this. And then some of the publications are here. You can actually download them off the WRC website. The South African Guidelines for Sustainable Drainage Systems and the Framework and Guidelines on Water Sets for Urban Design. We've got some little handy aids there, and I got one of my architect colleagues to translate engineering into architecture so that people could understand it, which they've done there. And those have served as the start line of a whole new era as we run out of community of practice. Kirsty Carden's very involved in that, trying to educate people how to do things differently. But since we're talking about Cape Town's water, I thought I'd better get back there. So here's an example of something that's been in existence for over 40 years. Atlantis, water management. So Atlantis sits up the west coast there. For many years, it was not connected to the Western Cape water supply system. It was completely dependent on groundwater, but it's in a very arid area. And what made Atlantis well ahead of its time, there are not many places like this in the world, is that from the beginning they designed the stormwater system to drain down to infiltration basins that then put the water into the ground to supplement the natural recharging process. That wasn't enough. So what they then did is they connected up the domestic wastewater treatment works and added that to the mix. And it was completely self-sufficient for something like about 30 years until it eventually was connected to the Cape Town system. But it runs to this day, and it serves an example of forward-thinking, water-sensitive design, keeping water in the city, not reliant on any outside transportation of water. It puts the water into the ground, and then once you put the water into the ground, it takes it out. But we can do better than that. So this is a project that one of my PhD students is working on. is the Cape Flats, which is the sandy area that runs between the two mountain ranges. In years gone by, this was actually a shallow sea. So at that point, the peninsula declared independence from the rest of Africa, and you had to go by boat. And then, sometimes I wonder whether we shouldn't. Maybe global warming is going to do it for us. Actually, I'm still hoping that I'll have a seaside home one day. I'm at 7 meters. Pretty by the neighbours. So this sand here is quite thick. In some places it's 40 meters thick, and a lot of the places it's at least 10 to 20 meters thick, and it can hold a lot of water. So we started to look and see whether we couldn't make better use of this. And so we took the Secret Catchment, which extends from the international airport all the way down through the Secret Flat in the sea. Of course, this is classic 1950s engineering. The airport's up here, and they needed to drain the airport. And so the only way they could think of was to basically have a channel all the way down to the sea. Now they're trying to extend it, and I'm suggesting that they should want to harvest that water and they can save themselves a lot in the water bill. But there you go. Connected to this are a whole lot of smaller pipelines, and on many of them there are little ponds that are there primarily to stop flooding. Flooding is a big issue on the Cape Flats, as you are aware. They take many forms. Some of them you wouldn't even know there were ponds if you were to pass them by. You probably have never noticed them if you have passed them by. Some of them do contain water. So there's a miscellany of these ponds, but they all hold opportunities. And the opportunities were what Johnny Kelly's been studying in his PhD. And he's been looking at how can we make better use of that water. And there are a couple of ways open to us. The first way, of course, is to stick your pump in the pond and make use of it. But the problem is the ponds aren't very big. Most of them are dry anyway. If we make the dry ponds into wet ponds, then we have to do something about the flood management, don't we? So we've got to solve this problem directly. The other alternative, of course, is to make better use of that storage that you have underground, that hidden storage in the aquifer. So he's been looking for the last 3 or 4 years at how we can make better use of those ponds as a way of capturing the stormwater that comes through the system. He's been looking at real-time control. It's a very nice word, that sounds really impressive. But what it really is about how we can manage the water to simultaneously enable us to store water as well as guard against floods. So if you like, you build a dam wall with an opening, and you hope that your weather reports are good. And when the weather report says there's a big rainstorm coming, you empty your pond. And now you've turned it into an empty pond ready for that flood to come. And then when there are no floods coming, or when it's full, you close the gates, and now you've got water. And you can do that both for harvesting directly from ponds. Also, you can change the way the ponds function and allow them to infiltrate into the groundwater underneath. Another thing he's been looking at, do we use for potable, that means drinking quality water, or do we use it rather to flush toilets and water gardens and all these other things? The problem with the latter, of course, is that it requires lots of extra infrastructure, additional pipes. The problem with the former is that you need to treat it. He's doing well. He's hoping to submit at the end of this year. I have had a peep at his results, but I thought it would be unfair, John, to give the game away. So you will have to keep an eye open for publications to emanate probably early next year as he tells you what the answer is. And maybe we can have another session like this. Mm-hmm. So just to finish up, I've been helped over the years by so many people. Finding particular Water Research Commission, some fantastic colleagues, 1 or 2 are here. John, of course, who's done all the hard work. Actually, as I got to think about my career, I've realized that it's actually quite simple. You don't have to be smart or clever to do great things. All you have to do is surround yourself with great people.
Thank you. Well, I stand here, I think, on behalf of my colleagues in Future Water, as well as on behalf of you, to thank Neil for the great lecture he's given us. And maybe just because I've mentioned Future Water, just to say that this is UCT's new interdisciplinary research institute, which is focused on water scarcity, impact on society, and the need for equitable access. And Neil is the deputy director, and he's really been one of those who's been absolutely instrumental in bringing together this exciting research space, a space in which we work across 6 faculties and 11 departments to do great, to try and understand better the impacts of water and new ways to enable our finite supply to meet the needs of our people, environment, etc. And so I'd like to start really by starting my thanks by honouring Neil for his really important role in the formation of Future Water and his ongoing commitment to this work. Moving on to the lecture, thank you for inspiring us with your lecture. From the figures that you've given us on how our water situation has developed and the crisis which we looked into, the insights into how we changed it, and the insights into the new ways of living and using this constant resource that we need have been really, really great. You've developed for us an understanding and some examples of how Cape Town can do this, of how we can live within our water supply. I think there's a really important message on stormwater and rainwater harvesting, especially in regions such as Cape Town, some really great and innovative work that you've showed us. And you've also shown the inspiration of how we can mimic and learn from natural systems and enhance these to increase, to be able to handle the increasing people pressure on our, again, finite resources. So thank you very much for that. But I'd also like to talk further about you then in your role as a UCT professor and how really what you do extends beyond the things that you've told us this evening. So as a professor at UCT, Neil brings together some really particular attributes. He has linked together, as Alison referred to right at the beginning, many years in practice as a consulting engineer in the water industry, on the ground with real-world problems. And he's linked this with an excellent intellect and a deep interest in creating new knowledge and innovation, and so allowed practice to meet deep science in the university environment over the last 20-whatever years. Which I think is special, and then not that many academics who can bring practice and deep science together in that way. He's also been really instrumental in bringing together disciplines that underpin technical challenges with an understanding of the people and the environment. It's somewhat unexpected from this gruff and direct engineer that we have sitting in front of us, and yet he's done it in an amazing way. He's really been a trailblazer in this space through his work, which extends right back to before 2005, through his pulling together with his colleagues of the Urban Water Management Research Unit, which was one of the forerunners of Future Water, and interestingly was driven by litter, because managing litter in water systems needs one to think about people's behavior as well as the technical aspects of what you do with the litter in the water. And it was through this that he embedded interdisciplinary work, bringing together engineering, anthropology, environmental and geographical sciences, and a few more, public health and a few more. And this really was an important starting point for Future Water. And it happened way back before people spoke about interdisciplinary institutes and that kind of research. So that's a really important part of what Neil brings to us at UCT and what you've seen through this lecture. He also brings, as you saw in the lecture, a good knowledge of Cape Town and its water space, and a good interaction with the city and the province in understanding this, and you saw that strongly through the talk. From a disciplinary point of view, he has a deep knowledge of hydrology and hydraulics, benefiting UCT students and researchers and industry in general, and it's not a very common skill in South Africa. It's not a very common discipline, so something quite special there. Neil is really passionate about urban drainage and its importance in water, sanitation, and hygiene, and I think you would have heard that come through. And so he has been really instrumental in leading South Africa in sustainable drainage systems, known as SUDs, through, and he mentioned there the development of the SUDS guidelines. And so it really is through this passion and his ability to inspire people and the great knowledge that he brings together that we see the person sitting in front of us, and that we've enjoyed his talk. So Neil, thank you very much for your lecture. Thank you for who you are as a researcher in our groupings, both in engineering, in future water, and across the university. And we look forward to many more wonderful research outputs and interactions.
Thank you also from me. We always challenged as universities, particularly we as UCT, that we show up in rankings, but our research is not relevant. We know, those of us who are inside here, that the research that we do is response to the questions, the big questions of our country and our world. And I think Neil's lecture tonight has shown that. It's just one example of the amazing work that's important to be done that in this country to inform us, to inform how we behave as citizens, but also to inform decision-making at a high level. I hope if you're not a UCT staff member sitting in the room, tell the world we are that responsive. Thank you so much for attending the lecture. Thank you to Neil, and congratulations to the family. Thank you for joining us. There's food. This is a celebration, so there's food outside. Join us. There's drinks, and hang out and chat to Neil some more. Thank you so much.